Welcome to the Recovery Lab podcast. We're glad you were able to join us. Recovery Lab hopes to destigmatize addiction and normalize recovery.
Our platform provides an avenue to share the many stories of those that have recovered from addiction, providing for the listener the most basic antidote to addiction. Hope. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like my name is Daniel Anderson, and it looks like Facebook is not playing well. So I guess we are just going to upload the video in post, and we're not going to, it says you do not have permission to live stream. Well, that's lovely. All right. Not a problem. Not a problem. We just won't live stream. But I will upload this video as soon as we're done. So, Lindsay, let me tell everyone a little bit about how Lindsay and I crossed paths. So, what was this? Week before last? Was that when that was?
Yeah.
Okay, so the week before last, we had Recovery Day at the state capitol here in Mississippi, and Lindsay was at the party before. So I guess that was Thursday night or Wednesday night, I believe, at the hotel.
Tuesday or Wednesday night, yeah.
Yeah. So Lindsay was there, and I tend to notice people that are, in my space, in my area. And what I noticed about you was you were you were having conversations with literally everyone in the room, everyone that was associated with recovery. You had some sort of a conversation with, and I was just like, this woman she is the most kind and professional person I believe I've ever met. So nothing happened at that party other than me just admiring how you were conversating with people. And I love to see people that are comfortable enough in their own skin to talk with other people, especially when it comes to recovery and sobriety. So fast forward 24 hours, we're eating lunch at the Foundry across the street from the Capitol in Jackson. And you came and sat down, and we had this conversation that was just incredibly honest, and it was just a phenomenal conversation. And you really you blew me away. I had no idea who you were whatsoever. I had no idea. All I knew was this person who has gone through struggles of her own and struggles with her family is sitting here, and we're having a conversation about something that I am incredibly passionate about, which is recovery and helping other people find that light at the end of the tunnel. And come to find out, you are equally, if not more, passionate about that thing than I am. So, and then the next day I started. I Googled you. I mean, we exchanged numbers. I Googled you because we discussed about getting you on the podcast, and I knew nothing about you, but I Googled you, and here pops up this other thing that you've been involved in, which is you are Miss Florida 2022. And I started thinking, okay, this is crazy. This person is doing huge things in the state of Florida. Now she's doing massive things in our state. On top of that, I did a little bit more research and realized how incredibly passionate you are about helping other people. So what I would like to do is I would like to display some of that I experienced from you in today's conversation. So let's start off. And also, Drew Hassan is my co-host. He's an attorney. He's a very busy guy, and he got caught up with some emergency stuff at the office, so he's not going to be able to be here with us today, but he sends his apologies.
No problem.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your history with mental health. Can we dive into that just a little bit?
Absolutely. So, it all started when I was born. I'm just kidding. But
I heard you were born at a very young age also.
Yes, I was born at a very young age.
Yes.
I couldn't walk until I was about, 2 years old.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a family with substance use, and I think that always played a factor within my mental health. And I will say I have loving parents that have loved me, supported me, but I think that family history always played a little bit of a background in my mental health. And I remember being in elementary school and I just knew something wasn't right with the way my brain was working.
Right.
And I know that it's not so weird now. I know that everyone has something that they struggle with, but at the time you feel so isolated when you're young.
Absolutely.
And I remember periods of time where I would go to the front of the school, and this is, where my weird OCD tactics come out.
Yeah.
But I was walking through double doors, there was like, the divider in the middle, and I'd
Right.
walk in one side, and then I'd come back out, and I'd have to walk in the other for no rhyme or reason, just because that's the way my brain worked.
Yeah.
And just throughout those years, it kept progressing and progressing to where I would, sit my parents down at night. And we had this ritual where I'd say, like, promise you won't die, promise nothing's going to happen. And I can't
Yeah.
imagine the wear and tear that took on my parents to promise their child every night that everything was going to be okay. But it wasn't until my parents really got me into therapy that we realized that I had obsessive compulsive disorder and that there was something that was underlying, that was contributing to the way I was acting and things that I was doing. And there was a reason behind it all. And
Right.
that's something where I kind of started my path to my treatment with obsessive compulsive disorder, and have been able to share that with other people, because mental health can feel isolating. And even when it's something as obscure as OCD, I say that because my OCD was obscure. Like, not everyone has a fear of like uh, uh, squirrels with rabies. Like, that was a fear of mine walking
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
block.
Yeah. No, it makes
And,
sense.
and it feels so weird. You just feel like something's wrong with you. So being able to share that I went through something like that, to the point where my parents almost had to put me into a psychiatric hospital because I just couldn't function in school or society. And it wasn't until we really went all in into therapy. And thank goodness we had the resources, because I know that's another barrier for people that are struggling with mental health. But I'm
Absolutely.
just so thankful that I got the help that I needed when I did.
Well, I think it's important to note, and I've said this a million times if I've said it one time. Everything that we go through, the difficult times, the positive times, and most definitely the difficult times, if we walk through those and we get through to the other side, we are now uniquely qualified to help other people in the future that are struggling with the exact same things. So it's yes, what you went through, I'm sure was very, very difficult. And you and I also want to be sure that we make it very clear that you kind of diminished the whole, I had OCD and it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal. It was something.
It was a huge deal back then. It was my whole life.
Right. So it was massively impactful on your life. And you did the work necessary to ensure that you kind of got through that. One thing that came to my mind is, can you talk a little bit about the substance abuse that you or that you experienced or were a part of in your family as a child growing up? And also, do you think that had anything to do with your OCD that you developed as a child?
Yeah, I can go into that. So I mentioned I grew up in a home with substance abuse. I watched one of my parents struggle almost the majority of my childhood. And so I never really associated the problems in my house to addiction. I always thought, alcohol was for people that were over 21. And once you hit that threshold, do as you please.
Right.
And I didn't realize that there was, there was people that once they started drinking, they couldn't stop drinking. Once they started using, they become addicted. I just didn't understand the science behind all that. I always just knew something was off, and I didn't quite understand it because there would be highs and lows and moods in our family. And I would see some fighting between my parents, and I would see where we'd go through some financial struggles. And I really just didn't understand it until it all came to a head in when I was finally entering college, when my family felt comfortable sharing this with us. And that was something that was crazy to me. And it was really hard emotionally. And I can't imagine, what my parents went through. I'm sure that was hard on them. But as someone who was an adult hearing this for the first time, that this had been going on for years, it was a lot to me because I wish I could have been there for my parents. And
Right.
I wish that I could have supported and loved them along the way. But I understand, there's boundaries that these parents want to make. And not everyone has a perfect journey and we don't all make the perfect choices. But I wish, I would have understood the science, everything behind addiction, attended meetings when I was younger so I could have known how to better support and love my family.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a addiction is a family disease. It affects everyone in the family. And I have to believe and this is not to point fingers or place blame on your family in any way, shape, or form. They were doing the absolute best that they could
Right.
to make you feel as loved as possible. It just so happened that they were going through some stuff themselves. So I can't help believe. I'll speak to my own experience personally. My dad is an alcoholic. He's been sober for about 14 years now, 13 or 14 years. But throughout my childhood, and again, I would have been an alcoholic and an addict, irregardless of what they did. But
Right.
I was also adopted, and I still to this day, despite having years of therapy, I still struggle with insecurities and being vulnerable and fears of abandonment. It's just something that I struggle with. It's not debilitating like it once was, but there are times when it flares up and I have to really, really look at it, but or dive back into it. But for me, having my dad be an active alcoholic and having these memories, one specific memory where I guess he was drunk and he and my sister got in this fight and he ran out in the front yard in his tidy whities. And I just remember, God, I had to be like 8 or 9 maybe. And I just remember screaming at him, "Dad, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you." And he ran off. And like, I can't help but believe that those experiences that I went through as a result of my dad being in active alcoholism had played some role in how I developed as a child. So I'm curious if I'm willing to bet that your loved one that was struggling with addiction and alcoholism or whatever the case may be had some sort of influence on you, and I have to believe that it had something to do with you developing the OCD. I can't say for sure, but
Yes.
I would be willing to bet that was a coping mechanism for you.
So this is always something that I talk about. I'm not a clinician or anything, so I could be
Neither am
completely
I.
wrong. Just,
Absolutely.
my what I think happened. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always
of
feel
course,
like,
of course.
genetics play into addiction.
Of
So I always
course,
feel like
sure.
my addictive personality that I've inherited was manifested in the form of OCD
Sure.
because I was big into patterns and habits and doing something over again for no reason, and I could not stop.
Yeah.
And later in my life, it almost flipped to the point where I remember in high school and college, I became very risk adverse.
Hmm.
I didn't want to try anything new. I didn't want to try drugs or drink because I was terrified of what could happen because I'd seen, my family members, and I didn't quite understand addiction, but I'd seen how it could make them act and how it
Right.
could affect them. So it's gone through different stages in my life of how it's affected me, but
Sure.
ultimately that got me to that stage now where I can be an advocate and listen to other people that are in recovery and
Right.
hopefully find ways to support them and let their voices be heard.
Absolutely. And everything that you have gone through is now a net positive because you've learned through it, you've walked through it with dignity and grace, and you are now better situated and uniquely qualified, like I said, to be able to help someone else. So whatever the root of any of the things that make you up, now you are an incredible woman. You are a powerful woman. You are making massive waves in this world. You are creating change that other people are not able to create because they don't have a platform. And so everything that has happened in your past It's a net positive because it's made you who you are today. And who you are today is a phenomenally well-rounded individual with the little experience and exposure I have to you. That coupled with the research that I've done online about you and your goals and your personality, you're an incredibly well-rounded person. So I would
Thank
like
you.
to talk a little bit about how did you get involved in the pageantry and the I feel like we have an ally. And when I say we, I mean people that struggle with substance abuse disorder. I feel like we have an ally in you. So how exactly did you get started in pageants, and what was that like for you? And what advice would you kind of give to young women that are, and men? I guess men can also do pageants. I think I don't know. That shows you
Right.
how educated I am on this. But so what would you tell someone that feels like this is something that's tugging at their heart? And what was it like for you to get started in that?
So ironically, I got started in pageants in like the peak of my insecurity about my OCD. So of course I didn't share it or anything, but I remember my first ever competition that I did. A little side note, I also struggle with trichotillomania,
Okay.
which is a whole nother world where you like pull out your hair.
Okay.
If you're not
Okay.
familiar
Okay.
with that, it can be on your head, on your eyebrows, arms, wherever. But my nervous twitches that I would sit there and I'd rip out the hair on my arms.
Did it did
And
it
my first
did it travel to your hair as well? Like, did you do that with my brother
It
struggles with
didn't,
that.
thank goodness, but it did
Right.
my eyebrows. There was a point in my life where I had no eyebrows, which
Okay.
you can imagine being a girl, already being insecure, walking around school with no eyebrows. It was a whole ordeal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but when I first started competing, it was in the peak of all of that, and I
When
actually got
how old were
last
you at that
place.
point?
I think I was like 10.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it was, I got last place at that competition.
Okay.
And I remember sitting on stage, and my mom was like, "You were ripping out your arm hairs." And I didn't even realize it because it was just something that I just started to do because
Yeah.
I was nervous. After that, I did like one or two here and there, but it was never really something that I pursued seriously until I got into college. And there was a point in my life where it's like, well, I need to pay for college. How am I going to do this?
Right.
And I knew that I had done pageants in the past and I had some experience, and someone had approached me with the Miss America organization because they're one of the largest providers of scholarship for young women in the world.
Absolutely.
So I, took a leap of faith my sophomore year in college and competed for my first local title. And I won the title of Miss Daytona Beach. And after that, I competed 6 more times before I won the title of Miss Florida. And it's funny, talking about genetics and addictive personality. That was probably my addictive personality, competing 6 times and never giving up before winning. But when I first started competing, my social impact, which is the cause or organization that you promote and you stand behind during your year of service, was about the Best Buddies organization, because I always felt that with my obsessive compulsive disorder, I always felt isolated, and I wanted to make sure that others that had intellectual and developmental disabilities never felt that way. So that was
Okay.
just something that was natural for me at the time. Once I graduated college and was no longer in Best Buddies, I did some deep diving and some self-reflection and kind of thought back to my story and the things that have had a big impact on my life. And I sat down and I had a conversation with my dad and asked if he would be okay with me sharing this story in order to help other people and help other kids that might be feeling in a similar way to how I felt when I was younger.
Right.
And from that moment,
Was he receptive to that?
he was very receptive to that. And I will say he is the most supportive man ever. He said, if my story can help other people, then I want you to tell it. If my story
That's
can
awesome.
if your story can help other kids, I want you to tell it. So that was the moment when I started bringing that story to the Miss Florida organization. And I remember the first year I competed with this platform, one of my judges lost his son to overdose. And so it was just a full circle moment of bringing something that was so uncomfortable and raw, and so many people resonate with it in a place as unconventional as pageantry. You don't really bring like subjects as raw as addiction to pageantry. It's usually something that, can have a nice little gala and you can support it and raise money, which of course is all the causes that the young women support are so important. But it was something that wasn't typical to be seen on a pageant stage.
Right.
And so I did that, competed that year for the first time and got first runner up. And I knew that I had to continue to share this story and, be an ally for those in recovery and work in the area of prevention for those students that might be struggling. I brought it back my final year and I won the title of Miss Florida. And I got to take that story to the Miss America stage. And it was really the most special experience ever to share my family's story and meet people that had struggled with similar paths. I remember the night before I gave up my title of Miss Florida, there's a teen program for ages 13 to 17, and then you enter the Miss program. And this little girl came up to me and she started crying and she said, my dad's in prison from drug use. And to, be able to hear that someone, resonates with your story and someone who you think has it all together that's on stage in a dress with their hair and makeup done.
Right.
It was really powerful for me to know that there were people resonating with my story in every area and corner of the state of Florida. And I'll never forget that year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just what a gift to be able to be bold in that moment and not go with the status quo and not do what every other woman has done before you. You were bold and you had a conviction on your heart that you're going to bring this to light. You are going to shed light on this topic. And it is a difficult topic for a lot of people. It's uncomfortable to talk about drug addiction and the isolation that goes with that, or comes with that rather. And my heart is very, very proud of you and grateful for you putting that out there. And like I said, being bold and not being afraid to trust your heart and to listen to your heart. And if the world were filled with Lindsays that were willing to do that, can you even imagine what this world would be like? This world would be an incredible, incredible place. So of course, I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners may be curious as well. So once you win Miss Florida, so you're Miss Florida obviously for a year. So do you have what does that year look like? Can you give us like a brief synopsis of what your duties look like per day? I mean, do you go from place to place with your crown on, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that being Miss Florida is a full-time job. So every single day you're
I have no idea.
appearances, and it's very tailored to whatever the person who wins, whatever their social impact initiative is.
Okay.
So with mine was called Prescription for Change, Addiction Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery. I would say a lot of my year was focused on the prevention aspect because I was very big on the fact that I didn't want to preach recovery. I'm not in recovery and I don't know what that's like.
Right.
I know what it's like to support someone in recovery and do my best, but I never wanted to be the type to go out there and preach to people that are struggling. So my year was mostly focused on the prevention side, and I had the chance to travel the state with the Department of Juvenile Justice on behalf of the First Lady of Florida's campaign, The Facts Your Future. And every county that I could attend, they brought me along and I was able to share my story. And there were typically other people that were accompanying me, like experts, medical experts. There were other testimonials of people that had been in recovery and have lived this experience. And so it was really cool to be able to team up on all different aspects and speak to students and try to either stop this in their tracks, or to have something that we can prevent this issue altogether. And I know it's so multifaceted and it's so hard, but I hope that in the people on the stage with all the different phases and stages of life, someone in recovery, someone who grew up in a house with substance use, a medical expert, they could see themselves represented, knowing that there is a path of this and that they can have the future that they want and deserve.
I think it's very wise of you to not want to preach, having not struggled with addiction personally. But I say all that to say the mere fact that you give a damn about us and about people like me that have hit their head against the wall time and time and time again, and try to get sober and go back out, and you are sympathetic towards people like me, and I just it warms my heart that you were willing to sacrifice a year of your life in order to get the message out there. Go and speak with people who are with children specifically that are the most vulnerable people. I was watching a program last night about meth, and the vast majority of people that start meth are between the ages of 13 and 17. That's when the vast majority of people try meth for the first time. And I can only imagine that the data is similar with other drugs as well. So you getting out there, getting into the field and reaching these young people, I look at me saying young people. What am I? I'm 40 years old. What am I talking about? But you being willing to do the hard work in order to get the message out there. It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible to me that there are people out there. For me, it's easy. It's easy to be passionate about recovery because I struggled with it. And like I said, I hit my head against the wall no less than 1 million times and tried every imaginable way to do it my way. And until I finally was broken and beat down to a point where I had no other chance or no other options other than to do something differently. So I'm grateful to you for you putting the work out there and doing the hard work necessary in order to get the message out there and to help other people. So
I'm thankful to you and the whole recovery community for letting me learn from you all. And I feel like you all are some of the most amazing people that I've ever met. I share this one story that my dad, from one time when he got back from an AA meeting, and I got home and he was cooking like pounds of spaghetti. And I was like, this is way too much for just like me, you and mom. I was like, what's going on? And he's like, well, I went to AA last night and, we were saying how we felt. And he's like, I resonated with how everyone felt, except for the ones that said they were hungry. And so he had gone to the meeting with a few people that were experiencing homelessness. So for him, to understand how everyone feels, but still feel like he can give more when he's going through his darkest time was something that was really eye-opening to me. And I feel like is very reflective of the recovery community.
Yeah, absolutely. The individuals that have gone through hell, their own personal hell, and done the work necessary to get on the other side of that. The vast majority of people that are alcoholics and addicts are insanely creative, insanely smart, and quite capable of doing incredible things. So yeah, it's it takes what it takes. We can be scandalous and do some awful things in active addiction, but once we get past that and we're able to learn and grow and move past that, we are 10 times better people as a result of going through that if we choose to abstain from what caused us our hell. So I don't want to keep you too much, but I am curious, what does your world look like today? How are you involved with the recovery community and your own personal mental health journey? What does that look like for you today? Have you made a lot of progress with your OCD? Is that a lot more under control? Does that still affect you negatively or positively? What does that look like?
It still definitely affects me, but I did so much work in my earlier life that I can now recognize when it is my OCD talking and not necessarily my rational brain.
Yeah.
So there's now a point where I have those thoughts and they worry me, but I know that it's not something that I actually need to worry about. I don't need to worry about something that I said once upon a time 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That is way past, and I can be a good person now, even though what I did may have not even been a bad decision. But it's stuff like that OCD people dwell on.
Yeah.
But in terms of my life, I'm always looking for better ways to become an ally in either the prevention, treatment, recovery community. I joined several coalition calls within the state of Florida and now branching out to different states around the country. And I'm just always looking for a way to let other voices be heard and lift them and to further the mission of, reversing this addiction crisis in the country.
Right. And it's a tall task that we're faced against right now. And Lots of people are dying every single day, and it takes individuals like yourself and those that are in recovery as well, but specifically those that are on the outside looking in, that have this desire to help and to be of service. And it from the bottom of my heart, me representing the recovery community, and let's not take that too far, but I do represent people that have struggled with drugs and alcohol and have gotten on the other side as a result of doing the hard work, trusting God, and trying to do God's will in your life. So from that perspective, I want to thank you for everything that you are doing to get the message. And I'm grateful that you are using this beautiful platform that you have created in order to create change, and it's not being wasted by just frivolous, silly nonsense. You got your 15 minutes of fame, and now you've just blown it, and you're spending money all over the place and just doing stupid stuff. You are not that person. You are highly focused. You are highly dedicated to creating positive change. And my heart is full as a result of my conversation with you and the work that you are doing every single day to help other people that are struggling with substance abuse disorder. So, is there anything else that you would like to say or touch on before we wrap this up? Again, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I know you're busy, and I'm super grateful for the time that you've given me so far. But is there anything else in closing that you would like to get out there?
Yeah, I just want to thank you and, touch on the fact that I've done a lot of cool things in my life, but to be able to be an advocate for a cause that I feel so strongly about has truly been a gift. I feel like a lot of people don't have the ability to focus a year of their life on something that they care so much about. And that was truly a gift for me to be able to do that. And as much as, I've been able to give, I've gotten so much from everyone that I've worked with. So I'm so thankful that this is the path that my life took me on.
Well, the only thing that I can say to you is don't ever stop. What you're doing right now is phenomenal, and you are creating a better world for everyone, and especially young women that look up to you. This is what you can do when you're passionate about something and you care about other people and you put other people first. So thank you so much, Lindsay. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. And next time you're in Mississippi, come on through. We'll get you in the studio and have a real interview. How's that sound?
Sure will. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks.